Hey, Alex here, and I wanted to walk through the process I do when I get any of the raw cinematic files sent over to those Unity packages and convert them into animations. So I thought it just makes sense to kind of walk through one of them that is Archer popping his head up through like a little sewer hole. So I've got this Unity package that was sent over to me, whole.unity package. So I'll click on that, get this little import window. Let's go ahead and import everything. So that comes in, and just so you know, this project I'm looking at right now, this is a kind of a standalone Unity project where I work on various cutscenes for Derelict Zones. So it already has a very similar organization to what I use in the main build, but one of the things I like to do is kind of organize all the assets here. So here you can see I've got a folder called sprites, and inside of that I created cutscenes. And then for each cutscene, I have a dedicated folder, and this is where the sprites, the prefab, and the animation controller and animation stuff will go. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. So I'll right-click and do create, and we're going to do folder, and I'll name this, we'll just call it whole, just for consistency. And then what I'm going to do is go up to this top level thing, and you can see this is where these three things came in at. We'll go ahead and drop it down into the whole. So now everything lives in here under sprites, cutscenes, whole, and we've just kind of organized it a little bit just so it's not hanging out in this top level folder. And then just to see where we're starting off, I'll go ahead and drag the prefab into our scene. And I get this shot. Now in this case, this has a main camera and a directional light already attached, so the default ones that Unity created, I'll just go ahead and delete those. And then next thing I do before I go any further is go ahead and save this scene. So we'll do save scenes. And let's see, for this one I have a dedicated scenes folder and a dedicated cutscenes folder. So we'll go ahead and call this whole. And that'll create the whole.unity, which is the name of the scene. Okay, so now we've got our scene established here, whole.unity. Right off the bat, first thing I want to take a look at is the camera, and this is out of frame a little bit here. So let's go ahead and line that up. Looks like we just need to scoot it over on X. So let's do about like that. And then just to see real quick, if I go into the aspect ratio here and go to 16:9, okay, yeah, it's just a little bit cut off at the side. So I'm going to go ahead and just touch that up now. Probably the easiest way is just to zoom in a hair on the scene. There we go. And maybe even take it down just to get a little bit more of the fingers in the scene. That's fine, right about there. So I think that looks good. I typically work in 16:10, which is how it looks on like a MacBook Pro, just to kind of get a sense of where it's, maybe cropping the image and if we want to do anything about that. Actually, now that I think about it, I'd rather not have his finger cropped here. So let me do this. I'm going to back it back out. Just a nod. Something like that. Yeah, I think that's good. Let's not even worry about the aspect for now. We can always touch that up later. Okay, so that all looks good. One thing I'm also going to do here is parent the eye to the head so that they move together. It's going to say break prefab instance. That's fine. Let's go ahead and do that. And so now if I lower, the head, the eye goes along with it. So the idea is we're going to create an animation where it kind of does something like this. It just kind of pops up, and then we can independently move that eye around as well. So we can kind of track and pan and kind of have him looking around a little bit with it. So let's go ahead and do that. And one other thing is we're going to want to do a fade with this, right? We don't want it to start fully in. So typically what I do for this part is create what I call black square, and that's just going to be a black sprite that overlays the screen. In all of my projects, I have a non-colored version of that called white square, and all this is a 16:16 pixel, so 128 bytes. It's just a tiny, tiny file, and we just paint this black. So we'll drag it into the scene here. And then I'll flip it on color, turn it black for now, and then obviously it's showing real low on the screen. So I found that for sprites like this, about 160 by 120 will fill up the screen, and then we just need to go up on the order layer. If we make it 10, for example, that's going to completely cover everything in our scene. So this will be a great starting point. Just to get one more thing set up, let me go ahead and toggle this off for the moment. If I go up here, what we want to get going now is an animator controller, which that's going to be used to handle our animations on this. So what we can do is just do add component, and we'll do animator, and it needs its own animator controller, which is basically the dedicated controller for the different kind of animations we might want to run specifically to this animation. Now really in this case it's just the one animation of him kind of popping up, but you still need to set this up as a basic step. So yeah, I just added a animator controller, animator component to that. Now to add an animator controller, if I click on this little circle here, you can see existing ones, but I want to add a new one for this that's dedicated. So actually, probably the best place to create this is just alongside the sprites. So back in our whole folder here, if I right click, I can do create, and then I can choose animator controller. So let's go ahead and create that. Keep it the same name, whole. And that sets up the very basics of our animation. So you'll see in a second how that works, but let me go back up to this layer, and we'll go ahead and drag our animator controller over to here, and now it has that established. And what I can do now is from here, let's see, we're ready to basically create an animation for this, so we need to bring up our animation screen, and that is probably under animation. Yes, so it's Command 6 is the shortcut, which I'm used to doing, but I'm going to do it through the menu here. So animation, and I actually have this on another screen, so let me drag this back over here. Let's do it like up here. We'll give it its own thing that we're looking at here. And so you see this message here: to begin animating whole, create an animation clip. We can just hit create. So we'll go ahead and do that. It's going to prompt us to name it. And we'll just name this Archer Popping Up. If I could spell it, there we go. Archer Popping Up. So let's go ahead and create that. This is a very blank animation at this point, but what we can start to do here is we can start to set up the different properties we want to animate. So one of the ones we could start with, for example, is, oops, I need to go parent our white square to here, so it's a sub item, and this way I can choose this to manipulate. I prefer to name it black square if it's going to be used for fade to blacks, so that's just a personal preference. I'm going to do that. So that's black square now, and if I come in here, black square under sprite renderer is where you get color. Hit the plus sign to add it, and then I can twirl this down. And right, I need to make sure this is enabled. Okay, so now that's enabled. And what you can see here is there's a basic timeline that runs from 0 seconds to, by default, 1 second. So at the 1 second part, this is really where we want to see the scene. So if I put in, for example, 0 for this, what we're saying is over 1 second duration, fade it from an opacity of 100% or 1 down to 0, which is totally transparent. So that's basically the way it works. Now this runs really quick, so watch. And it's going to loop by default as well. So that's, first of all, it's kind of quick for what we want. So I'll just kind of drag this part out. Let's say it's 2 seconds. Now these values here I'm not concerned about. This is the red, green, and blue values, RGB. I think they just get in the way, so I delete these out. All we're really concerned about is the alpha channel here, so this is the only, kind of almost think of it as a sub-property of color that we need to concern ourselves with, because we're not changing the color. Let's set up a couple of other parameters. So if we think about it in reverse, this is where we want to end up, is with Archer's head about here, his hand about here. So what I want to do is basically take a snapshot of that, at least for his head. So let's do transform and position. And then what that does is this is grabbing the X, Y, and Z of his head right here. And really, let's just say this is going to happen around 8 seconds. Before that, we want him down in the hole. So this one's, again, a little bit tricky with the fade, so let's just turn that off for now. Oops, that was the head layer I'm on. I got to make sure I'm on the black square. Disable that. Okay, now we can see everything. So say, for example, if we start his head further down, so let's say it's like starts down here, what's going to happen now is it's going to slowly rise up. Now we really don't want it to start rising up until the hands come into the scene, so I'm going to drag that, say, somewhere around here, and then over 3 seconds he just kind of pops up. We want to start with that hand fading in too, and we probably don't want to start until the fade kind of comes in, which is about the 2-second mark here. So I think this is a good place for us to go to hand, and we're going to do spike transfer. Again, we're going to be playing with the opacity on this one so it's color that we want. And let's go ahead and set this up. It's going to start at 0, so it's out of the scene. And then I'm going to copy this. You can copy with a Command C. So I selected this and then copy. And then if I come over here, I can paste. So now we have that same value of 0. And really, this is where we want it, the hand to fade in. So we'll go over 2 seconds on the timeline. I can click here to add a point. You can already see it's starting to fade between 0 and 1 in this point. But really, we want it to come in full at this point. So we'll make that a 1. And then now if I scrub backwards, you can see what's happening is that hand's going to fade in over 2 seconds. So let's go ahead and watch a rough of this just to see where we're coming in at. And just to put the fade in there also, let me go back to black square and make sure that sprite renderer is enabled. So I can hit the play control here. We've got a fade, hand fades in, and a little late, but yeah, you get the idea. His head pops in. So really by this part is when I think the head should start to pop up. So let's go ahead and slide this stuff over. So hand fades in. It's a little slow. I like how cautious he is. It maybe starts down a little too far. I'm not sure. So let me tweak this value. So this is the Y value we're looking at here. So okay. Yeah, right about there at the edge is fine. So as soon as it starts coming up. So let's take that from, right now it's basically 4 to 7, so that's 3 seconds. Let's dial this back to, say, let's make it about 2 seconds. Okay, so he comes up. And maybe this is like, we give it a half a second to pause, and then the eyeball can start to dart around. So let's go ahead, we'll do add property, and we're gonna go to, it's a subclip of head. So we twirl down head and you'll see eye is right here. And then from eye, we are looking for the transform. We want to mess with the position essentially. So let's go ahead and click that. Now by default, it's just gonna have some arbitrary value in here. So I'm gonna click a point here, just to have something to manipulate, and then say right about here, and again this is the X value we're concerned with, we're just going left and right laterally. If I start to dial this a little bit to the left, we don't need to go too much, maybe about there, oop, something like that. Oh, you see what happened here? I got like a kind of a double point, so if you have this happen, I zoomed in with the mouse scroll. Just get on one of these and delete it, and then kind of figure out where we're at. So, okay, so this is the non-value. So let's go ahead and dial this one in. About there. So he starts here, he looks over there. It could probably be a little bit quicker actually. We'll have to play this just to kind of get a sense of timing. He looks over there, he takes a look around. So what I do here in this case where we want to hold on that position, I'm just going to copy it and paste it here. So nothing's going to change there. And then about here is when he's going to start looking the other direction. So let's go, let's see, let's dart over in the other direction. Oop. I just want an X point. So, okay, yeah, let me click on the X line. And then for this one, it's going to be the other side. So about, let's say here. Again, click, Command C, Command V, and then last, we'll move them back to that original point. So let me copy this and then paste. So now the full sequence, let's zoom out and kind of watch the play. Look to the left, look to the right. And it got a little sloppy at the end, so let's dive in on that. So he looks over here. Okay, right, this is the leftmost point, so we want it back at that center, which is 0.94. So we actually just dial that in by typing it. So if I come up to here, click on it, I can do 0.94, and then that is back to center, basically. And that's where it ends up here, too. So we actually don't even need this point, because he's already kind of back to center on this point. And then really, I think we just fade the scene out. Like, it doesn't need to be too much more than this for what this thing is doing. So back on our black square, maybe say starting about here, we'll click and add a point. Again, I'm on the alpha channel here. It's currently at 0. But then let's go out, say, like, let's try making this a 1.5 seconds. At this point, we'll turn the transparency back to 1, meaning fully dark. And so that's it. And so let's back it up and watch that full sequence, just to kind of see where we're coming in at. So hit play. Hand fades in. Here comes Archer. Looks around. It's a little bit fast on the eye movement. Now that I look at it, like, it's a little bit too darty. Like, he's not getting a good read of the situation, so maybe just a tad longer looking off in that direction. Right now we've got it, yeah, less than 1 second, so let's go ahead and pull up on that. We can get rid of this hand one, because we're not doing anything with the hand alpha, so that's just kind of getting in the way. So here's the thing, is we have all these kind of frames after this, especially with the fades, so we need to pull all these back. So you can just make a marquee here and take all this stuff and just drag it over. So, okay, he looks off this way. We want him to look over there a little bit longer, so let's drag this over to say here. So he looks over, he gets a read, then he cautiously looks the other way, he's getting a read. So we need to extend this one here too a little bit, just make sure we're getting good reads on both sides. And then he moves back to center, and then we can fade. So let's take that from the top. Okay, so let's hit play. Fade, hand. Here comes Archer. Looks over that way. Again, still a little bit fast on the moving around. I don't hate it. I'm trying to think what looks natural. Looks over here. It's not bad, actually, for a quick rough pass that we knocked out in about 18 minutes. It's pretty good. I'll take it. Maybe the hand could fade in a tad sooner. That's not bad either. I kind of like it. So anyway, that's how I set that up. That's basic animations. There is a cutscene script I'm going to add to this in actual production that is basically used to identify what the scene is being used for. So that's where you kind of get more into the scripting side of things. Really the focus of this video was just to kind of, again, walk through basic animations and how I organize the project. But the last thing we could kind of do at this point is resave that prefab, right? Because earlier I broke the prefab out to, sub the eye for head, to add in that black square. So what we can do is just drag this back over this one, and now that's the updated prefab. I'll go ahead and hit save. And then from here, what I will do when I export this to Unity is, instead of exporting the prefab itself, I can go into scenes and cutscenes and you can export the actual scene itself. So if I go to whole and do export package, you're going to see all the scene, the sprites, and you see how it maintains this hierarchy of sprites, you know, just again drilling it down. So this is just for general organization. So at that point I'd go ahead and hit export, and this will just create another Unity package here. So whatever, whole animation, whatever. That, or you don't have to give it the name, you can just do whole animation. So that created a new Unity package, and at this point, same thing, I'll just double click, open that up in the actual build, and it'll be ready for prime time. Alrighty, well, I hope you find this to be a useful video, and again, just wanted to show some basics of animations there, so curious to hear your feedback on this. I'd be happy to do more videos like this, just because it's good for me to talk through the process. I feel like it helps me understand what I'm doing better and how I can explain it better. There's already a couple of small things I was thinking about as I went through this, but just figured I'd do it more off the cuff to kind of show the raw process of things. So yeah, that's it. Boom, boom.